Now that you understand how to make major scales and you're starting to understand how to make minor scales, you can spell triads and you're well on your way to learning seventh chords. We're going to talk more in detail about chord function. That means when you have a chord from a song, what number scale degree does it start on? What's its quality? And what's its job? And we've touched on this, but today we're going to go into a much deeper dive, and I'll break this into a bunch of shorter videos. So the first thing we want you to understand today is that the scale that you use affects the qualities of the chords that you would make for a certain key. For instance, if I wanted to make a 1 chord or a chord starting on C using the key of C major or the C major scale, then I will use C, E, and G. And that would be a C major triad. Or if I wanted to throw the 7 on, then it would be a C major 7th chord, because those are the notes in the scale. Now let's take a look at the 1 chord or the C chord using key of C minor or the C minor scale. I would use the C and the E flat and the G. And you see how that makes a C minor triad? The scale creates the chords, and those sounds together tell your ears whether it's a major key or a minor key. And you might not be able to name everything intellectually, oh, it's this, it's this, it's this, but you know when they match because you're used to these sounds. We have hundreds of years of music history doing that for us, okay? So, and if we go up to the 7th, B flat, that's a whole step below, and that makes a C minor 7 chord. And so, right off the bat, if I'm playing, and you hear a 5 chord, a G7, and I go to a C chord, you know we were in a major key, because the 1 chord in a major key or in a major scale is always going to be major. And if I was doing the G7 chord, my 5 chord, and I go to C minor, well, you know we were in a minor key because my 1 chord is minor. And that's true of lots of different chords. They all work together. So let me investigate a few other chords for you. If we want to build ourselves a 4 chord in the key of C major, then we would go F, A, and C, and we would have a F major chord right there. And by extension, if we throw the 3rd on, it'll be F major 7, okay? But if we were doing this in the key of C minor, then we would get an F, an A flat, and a C by virtue of using these scales. And that would be an F minor chord for our 4 chord. These things group together. So if I'm playing in the key of C major, you'll hear C, and then I'll go to F major, and then I'll go to my 5 chord, G7, and goes to there. But if I'm in C minor, the chords that grow out of them, while they're similar, still F and a C and a G and those kind of things, their qualities change because the scale notes are different. So if I were in the key of C minor, I'd be like C minor, and then F minor, and then I go to my 5 chord, G7, like that. So these scales grow specific chord qualities, and they have a certain sound that builds the world of I'm in a minor key or I'm in a major key. Plus they have different functions. 1 is home, 5 is called the dominant chord. It takes us back to home. It's the thing that binds the rest of the song together. These are our framing chords, 1 and 5. When we look at phrases of music, you'll find that they're almost always at the beginnings and ends of phrases at the important places. And then the other ones, like the 4 chord or the 2 chord or things like that, they have filler functions. That's overgeneralized. They actually have very specific kind of, we could get into it in deep theory if you were a music major, but right now if you think of this as the burger, the bun, and all the other chords have different roles of making that a unique tasting, like sandwich or burger or something like that. And it matters, changes the taste or sound of your chord progressions in your songs. But there you go. All right, we're going to talk about one other chord right now and then summarize, and then we'll cut this video at this point. You can go on to another one. So, you know, if you were in a music theory major or like going to be a music major, we'd get into this in very detail. You'd know the quality of every chord and how they interact, what chord goes to what. We'll do some of that, but we can't do all of it. But I want to talk about your 5 chord, because home is 1 and 5 is the other important chord. If we build a 5 chord in major, G, B, D, F, I'll spell it like this, G, B, D, F. Well, the triad is major and the 7th is minor. So we have a dominant 7 chord, okay? Or a major triad, right? So when we're looking at music, your 1 chord is going to be major and your 5 chord is also going to be major, or if it's got a 7th on it, it's a dominant chord. It's very important because this B right here is a half step away from the C and it pushes you there. It's actually got a specific name called the leading tone because it leads you back to the 1 chord or 1 note right there. And this is a very important sound. And you can hear it. I'll play it for you. Here's my C chord. And then my G7. There's my B, and it really wants to go back to C like that, okay? Even if it's a triad, there's my C, here's my G chord, there's my B, and it comes back to C, pushes there, it leads to it. It's called the leading tone, has a tendency to go there. Now, here's the thing about minor, and this is where I want you to really focus, because I'm going to tell you it's very important, and then say, and I can't tell you why. Well, I can kind of tell you why. If we build our 5 chord in C minor, we're going to get a G and a B flat and a D and an F, right? It's my 5 chord right there, or G, B flat, D, and F. That's a minor triad and a minor 7th right there, or a minor 7 chord. That's what you normally get if you just use this scale, and it sounds fine. Here's my 1 chord C minor, and here's my G minor 7 chord, and then go back to the C minor. Has a very like Lord of the Rings or ancient medieval kind of Flight of the Conchords. But here's what happened in music history. We really, really loved the sound of the B going up to the C, leading us there. And so in music history, they took their minor scale and they made variant scales for different things. They modified them. And so there are 2 other scales, and we're not actually going to get to them in this class. One of them is called the Harmonic Minor, and one of them is called the Melodic Minor, and you can look those up, or we can have a private conversation. I can teach you that. But one of those scales was made specifically to change this chord right here. And so what we do here for the 5 chord, and when the 7 substitutes for the 5, in other words, any chord that's going to take us back to the 1 chord or lead us there, they made it natural. This is the sign for natural. It means not sharp and not flat, okay? So we alter this note right here so that when we build our 5 chord, it's still a major triad, right? Or a dominant 7, all right? Let's go over that again. For sound reasons in history, when they built their 5 chord in the minor key, they changed this note number 7 and raised it up so that you would still end up with a major triad, just like in the major key, and a dominant 7 chord, just like there. So it has that same pull back to the 1 chord. Here's what that sounds like. So C minor, and here's G7. There's my B pulling back to there. Now we'll find exceptions to this rule. Some composers will have used it, the old one, for different sounds and things. But the majority of the time, your 5-7 chord is going to be dominant, and your 5 chord is going to be major in a minor key, even though the scale would suggest otherwise. Let me summarize then. When you are looking for 1s and 5 chords, if you're in a major key using a major scale, your 1 chord is major triad, right? Now, it could also be a major 7th chord if you put the 7th on there, and it can also be a 6th chord, but we'll talk about that later. Your 5 chord is always going to be a major triad or a dominant 7 chord, right? Those are your two choices there. Now here's the thing, when you're in a minor key using a minor scale, the difference is that your 1 chord is going to equal a minor triad, okay? It says we're in a minor key, we're using a minor scale. But your 5 chord has been altered from the scale and will also still be a major triad or a dominant 7th chord. And just get that in your head. We're going to apply it later, but if you get that to begin with, my 1 chord, major or minor, depending on which key I'm in, but the 5 chord that works with it is always going to be major and always going to be a dominant.